I'd say I'm definitely a combination. I've learned a lot of things the hard way, but I try and do better as I get older. So getting back to the chronology of bikes, so we go through all these dirt bikes, which was great experience for the kids learning how to ride. At this point, we've got 3 Ducatis in the garage: the XDLS, the Multistrada, and my son's A21 Monster, which I'd ride on occasion. And then I decide, you know, I really ought to get back to something where my wife's comfortable with riding with me. So that's when I get a 2018 Street Glide Special in the Wicked Cherry color, a beautiful color. And I had that bike for about a year. And this is about the time where I started having these long bouts of insomnia about every March, and I'd just get virtually no sleep. You know, after maybe 1 or 2 hours, I'd wake up and I'd be done. I'd go down to my office at my downstairs level of my house and just crank out office work. Got a lot done, but it just wasn't sustainable. I mean, after a week or so, I was just like fried. So I went to the doctor and they put me on prescription Ambien, and my God, that stuff messed me up. This created horrible anxiety, and it took me a few months to figure out what was going on, and got off that stuff. But in the interim, I had it in my head that I needed to raise cash, that maybe the business forecast wasn't so good, and so I kind of got rid of some of my discretionary purchases. And then once I resolved that situation with that bad reaction to that prescription medicine, I realized I was just catastrophizing things, and I was in good shape to own a motorcycle or two. So got back to the Street Glide Special, my 2019, that I still have. Also, at about this time period, I started buying motorcycles so my sons could learn how to work on them. So we got an old 1982 750 Yamaha Virago. Only had 12,000 miles on it, so I'd been doing a lot of sitting in someone's garage, and that thing needed a lot of work. So my boys would do things like rebuild the master cylinder on the brakes, put in new brake lines, new drum pads for the rear brakes, that sort of thing, new starter clutch parts. And that was a great experience for them, and they really learned how to work with their hands and learned that they like to do it. So then, not long after that, I bought a Yamaha YZF 600R sports bike. I got it at a Copart auction. I call this bike my Copart Special. We had a lot of fun working on that bike. I still have that bike. It's a blast. It's actually the quickest bike I've owned. Well, second quickest. The quickest was that XDLS. The 0 to 60 time on that was apparently 2.7 seconds. Had launch control too. I was never comfortable enough to use the launch control because I was on public streets all the time, and was never in a good place to actually try and do that. But essentially, you put it in launch mode and you rev up full throttle and slowly let out the clutch lever, and off you go. Not for the faint of heart. But I didn't realize that those 600s could be so quick until one time I was side by side with a guy in an Audi at a stoplight, and the road ahead merged into one lane, and I could tell this guy was going to jam on it and whip in front of me at the last second, which I didn't want to have happen. So I just got on it, and I left that guy in the dust. It's like, wow, this thing's quick. It's also fast. You see people on the internet running those old sport bikes at YZF 600 up to 180 miles an hour. You know, really, the heyday for sport bikes was in the early 2000s, before they started throttling down for emission control reasons. So really, that's kind of a pure sport bike experience. You don't have a lot of electronics, you don't have ABS, you don't have traction control, so you got to really watch what you're doing on those things. Also, we picked up a a 700 Honda Shadow 1986 to work on. So bought it from my local motorcycle dealer for 600 bucks as is, and that thing turned into a money pit real quick. And not only that, parts were really hard to come by, which I was surprising. I thought you could buy pretty much any kind of Honda and get parts for it, but that's really not the case. Also, one of our recent repair jobs was a 2020 Harley Davidson Roadster. Still have that bike in the garage. That bike's a lot of fun to ride. Took about 7 months for all the parts to come in. I guess compliments of supply chain issues. But yeah, that bike's in my garage. So what do we got in my garage right now? Got the 650 Vulcan that my son, who just turned 17, rides. When in 2020 he used his own money to buy that. On the same day, I kind of felt bad because I ended up trading my son's Monster, because through a combination of circumstances, like maybe he wasn't paying me back on the loan, I traded it in on something I was gonna ride. And so my wife and I helped him out. When he graduated, we bought him a 2020 Z900 RS, which is a beautiful bike. He had that bike for about a year and then moved to St. Louis for work. And he really didn't want to ride St. Louis traffic, which I didn't blame him, so I sold that for him last summer. And then last year, my wife, for our 25th wedding anniversary, bought me this 2020 Suzuki Katana, which I absolutely love. It's probably my all-time favorite bike. It's so sporty and so easy to ride and handle. It's just a dream, really. And we still have the 750 Virago, which interestingly is just like the 82s that I owned, except the difference in displacement. You know, when I bought those bikes, my 500 and the 920 Virago back in 86 and 87, you could go to a metric dealer and choose among, you know, 5 or 6 model years of brand new motorcycles. That's when the Japanese were kind of flooding the market with those. And even with the Harley tariffs, or the tariffs that Harley got the US government to slap on the Japanese motorcycle manufacturers, so they're still way cheaper than a Harley. But it's kind of funny, I never really thought years later that I'd be picking up a bike that one of my kids would be learning to ride on, that was pretty much identical to what I learned to ride on. And I think it was good that he learned to ride on that thing, because you get a healthy respect for not locking up the brakes and not getting too crazy, because obviously the braking and the handling isn't anywhere near what it would be for a modern bike. But at the same time, I wanted him to progress to a more modern bike as quickly as possible, just from a real safety aspect. But learning how to ride that kind of bike, I think, was a good experience for him. And my youngest is on an MT-03, Yamaha MT-03. He absolutely loves that bike, and that's a real fun bike to ride. Before that, he had a Kawasaki Z125 Pro he rode for about a year or so, and that was a good experience. And then at one point, my oldest son, before he got any of his bikes, he had a Yamaha 250 Virago. And that's a great bike to learn on, and I'm a big fan of going through displacements gradually as you get more experience. So starting out on maybe a V-twin, smaller displacement, go up in displacement, and then go up to, say, an inline triple or inline 4. And especially for guys, if they're at all like me, I mean, it just takes a while to kind of get to where you don't listen to that little demon on your shoulder egging you on to do things that's probably not in your best interest, like, hey, I think I can make that pass, or hey, I wonder how fast I could get this bike going in this short period of time, that sort of thing. even then I'm still have those kind of lapses. I remember I was on my XD Diablo S, and they were doing utility work in the roadway, and the contractor just piled a bunch of gravel in the trench they caught across the asphalt, and it was about 6 inches higher than the roadway, this pile of gravel, and it looked pretty loose. And for whatever reason, I told myself, I think I can make it, and that should have been a warning. So anyway, I hit that pile of gravel going about 15 miles an hour. It was like dropping into quicksand, and kind of fell over sideways in slow motion. It's more embarrassing than anything else, but just got a little scratch on the engine case that was able to touch up, but that was it. I called the city engineer and said, hey man, yeah, get these guys to backfill this stuff a little bit better. And he wanted me to file a claim against, in this case, AT&T. And I'm like, well, no, I was the one that decided to go across it, but just FYI, they ought to be doing a little bit more there in terms of compaction and so on. That was my point. Just, hey, do better, and I'll, for my part, use better judgment. But riding motorcycles has been a really important part of my life. It allows me to kind of clear my head, get outside from maybe an office situation. So I try and get on the bike as much as I can. I ride year round. The other thing I'm trying to do is get to where I can appreciate a new model of motorcycle or a new type of motorcycle and not automatically want to own it. Try to stay off the Hedonic Treadmill. I did a video about that one time. There, I'll put the link in the description. But please let me know about your motorcycle experiences. What got you into it? Why did you buy certain bikes? Was the experience what you had hoped for when you got it? What made you want to get a different bike after a certain amount of time? Did you find yourself at any point owning more than one motorcycle? Safety tip, by the way. Well, I've followed these guys on big pieces of farm equipment, and it's kind of tempting to go around them. One time I was following this guy on giant balloon tires, and I was thinking about passing him, and it's like, nah, I'll just hang back. And sure enough, all of a sudden this guy just whips across and turns into a field. It was like, well, yeah, there's no road there, but he can go there. So that's it for this topic today. Please let me know your thoughts in the comments section, and thanks for watching. Please stay tuned for the next video.